Hey there, geographers. It's Angela here, and we're going to be going over a little bit about just the specifics of regions. And I know it seems like, well, I know what a region is, and we all do. We all understand that we can study anything on in a given space. So we can study a city, we can study the campus of Oregon City, or a larger city like Oregon City or Happy Valley, or Sherwood, for example. Then we can go out to the county level. We can go out to the state level. Then we can go to the region. Well, what does it mean to be a region? So pretend as though you have a map in front of you. Think like I have a map in front of me right now. And what would you consider to be the Pacific Northwest? Would you include Idaho? Would you include parts of Western Montana? Then does that mean do you include Nevada? Do you include the northern part of the state of California? Hmm. Now, pretend like you've got a map in front of you and think about what would you consider the South? Would you include the state of Texas? Would you include all of Texas? How about Missouri? Would you include Washington, D.C., our nation's capital? So, the idea and the premise of what a region is, we know it in our minds, but when it comes down to it, we have perceptions about what we think a particular region is. How do we come to those perceptions? Well, as human beings, we're the sum of all our experiences. So let's say, for example, majority of us, some of us are from different parts of the world, but right now we live in the Pacific Northwest. We do. And so maybe we don't have a great understanding of what it's like to live in the Midwest. Now, many times coming from the Western United States, we consider the middle of the United States, this whole region, to be the Midwest, where really the Midwest pertaining to regions is more considered this area that I'm highlighting with my mouse. What do we consider the Southwest? Does that get included in Southern California? Are certain parts of Nevada included in that? Well, according to this map, no. According to this map, Southern California is not included in the Southwest. But look, a majority of Texas is, not all of Texas. So sometimes we have states, and parts of our state are considered to be in different regions. And what does that mean? So a region can sometimes be a mental construct. And we've been working on our mental maps as well. And if we haven't already, we're going to be working on our mental maps because we all perceive particular places and spaces differently based off of how we view the world, how we've experienced the world, or how we see things. And many of us might outline similar regions, and this may depend on where we're from, our background, our prior experiences, and one person may divide an area of study one way, while another may perceive this region completely differently. And as a geographer, we base a region on a particular goal, and those goals are based off of a theme. So we regionalize places based on their patterns or on their themes. Because so many of us could walk around and say, well, this region is here, and I'm going to map this region here. And since we can describe them in so many different ways, geographers, in order to measure them, we've come up with a way of signifying various regions based off of themes. Think about some of the themes that we've discussed in class. One theme, perhaps, that we've only touched on is the physical nature of our Earth. So, what you're looking at now is the continent of North America based off of biomes. So, based off of climate and regional physical characteristics. So, For example, if you look at the area that we live in here, it's this pretty like tealy blue, and this is considered the marine west coast forests. Now, just to the other side of us in the valley that we live in, and the Cascades is considered the northwest forested mountains. To the east of us, it's this yellow, and it's considered the North American deserts. And this starts all the way up. There's even a little part here in Canada, Washington, all the way down into parts of Mexico. So, what I'm trying to explain to you is that we can base our regions off of themes. The theme that we're looking at here are biomes. Some of our themes might be based on other patterns that we notice. So, how do we signify or claim the basis for a particular region? We have to categorize them based off of patterns, and it's the pattern of your choice. Like, for example, this theme that we're categorizing here is based off of fan bases for particular football teams. This map is a little bit old. I haven't been able to find a current map that's similar to this, so I continue to use it just because I think it's fun. So this map is characterized by a set of places connected by lines of communication, and they share a common focus. They share a common focus of the fans that they are for a particular football team. So here, where we live right here, majority of fans are loyal to the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams were located here and now they've moved back. The Cardinals are based in Phoenix, Arizona. You've got Cowboys fans here in the southern part of Nevada and also here in parts of New Mexico, Oklahoma, and then we also have Arkansas, all based off of the Cowboys in Texas. And again, you'll find that these loyalties or these patterns that we've decided to regionalize this map in are functional because these areas share a common focus. These functional or nodal regions are organized around a central point. So, for example, that central point, as we looked at the map previously, was regarding a football team. It could be regarding a specific TV station, right? We don't have very many regional TV stations left. It might be around a particular port, or how close you live to a particular Amazon fulfillment center. I mean, 5 years ago, our Amazon fulfillment center in Portland was all the way up in Seattle, and now we have one. And have you noticed how much faster you get your Amazon packages? So, this functional nodal region is based off of a dominant central point. Again, we can see this visualized here regarding loyalties or nodal functional regions regarding radio stations. Another way that we can classify regions is by what we call a formal region. This is characterized by an area which everyone shares one or more common distinctive characteristic. Like, for example, language would be one of them. The other one might be something we've already gone over, how you say the word soda, pop, or Coke. This map here that I'm hovering over has to do with hogs and pigs in the United States. So the way we're formalizing these regions is based off of the category of one or more distinctive characteristics. This being regarding pigs or hogs, this being regarding how you say the word soda or pop, the other one might be language. Another example of a formal region might be based off of what we're looking at here. This is based off of colonization and thus language. So, this central theme here has to do with regions, and these regions are categorized based off of how they were colonized, and hence the colonization languages that they now and might not now, but did used to speak. For example, the French colonized what we call French Indochina, which is Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. So 20 years ago, you could go to Vietnam and speak French. One of the reasons why today Vietnam has a long, rich history with pastries, sandwiches, and baguettes, because the French colonized this part of the world. For example, Spanish and the Americans colonized the Philippines. We have many, many of our Filipino brothers and sisters who have last names like Perez or Gonzalez or something like that. They have Latin last names because the Philippines was colonized by the Spanish. After all, how do you say how are you in Tagalog? Exactly how you say it in Spanish. We have the British that colonized New Zealand and Australia. And as a result, what do they speak today? They speak English. So this formal region is categorized by that single dominant characteristic. Another type of way that we can categorize a region is based off of perception. We also call it vernacular, but we can call it perceptual as well. It's categorized by a place people believe exists as part of their cultural identity. So, for example, the South. Some people, we call it the South. Some people call it Dixie. Some people might call it the Sun Belt. And some people might call parts of this the Midwest. They just might. Some people do consider parts of Texas and Arkansas and Kentucky the Midwest. This ties into our own personal perception of where we think a particular region is. Again, here are some more perceptual regions. So, many of us do not consider this middle part the Great Plains. Many of us in the West Coast consider this the Midwest. But that's really not the case when you live in other parts of the country. But that's our perception of what this region is called and is. Now, here, take a look at where we live. Out west, it is considered actually a majority of the state of Oregon and Washington. And where we live is considered West Coast. Now, this map perceives that the Southwest does include a part of California, where we have other maps that have said, no, California is not included in the Southwest at all. Here is another example of a perceptual region of the United States. So let's see how we do at understanding the different ways we can categorize regions. So, for example, this is a map that's looking at the flight patterns from San Juan, Puerto Rico to other islands in the Caribbean. Is this an example of a functional, nodal, a formal, or a perceptual vernacular region? Which one is it? Let's go to our next example. We're looking at Western Kansas. Where is Western Kansas? So is the map that we're looking at an example of a functional nodal region, a formal region, or a perceptual region? After all, where is Western Kansas? Here's our next example. This map is outlining where the Rocky Mountains are in North America. Is this an example of a functional nodal region, a formal region, or a perceptual vernacular region? Let's go to our next example. We are looking at hubs. We're looking at Walmart hubs throughout the United States. There's some in green and there's some in red, and that's based off what kind of a hub they are and if they're growing, if there's some that are new. So what you're looking at are these red dots are hubs of Walmart distribution centers. So is this categorization of region an example of a functional nodal region, a formal region, or a perceptual vernacular region? Let's take a look at this map. This map that we're looking at is got some interesting names and categories for regions, including some maps. For example, the west coast here is called the left coast, and it has a map or a flag that's represented by a lot of flowers. Hmm. And then we have this part of the United States, also conjoined with Mexico, has a chili pepper on it, and it's called El Norte. So is this map and how it's categorized an example of a functional nodal region, a formal region, or a perceptual vernacular region? Now, we're looking at the state of Montana. Is this a functional nodal region, a formal region, or a perceptual region? Here are the answers. How did you do? You might say to yourself, what is the utility in learning about something like this? Because in geography, we get to choose the space that we want to study, and we get to choose what we want to study. So it's important to understand why particular spaces are organized, how they're organized. We get to choose what we study in that given space. So it's important to understand that you can categorize a region however you'd like to using these three methods.